Welcome back to Rank and File, the needlessly anal-retentive rating and ranking of all your favorite movie bad guys. This episode, shockingly, we're discussing From Russia with Love, the second and some might say best film in the James Bond franchise. Roll that arbitrary title card! If you clicked on this video, then you've probably seen this movie. Consequently, we're not going to be delving too far into plot, so if you haven't seen From Russia with Love, well, what's wrong with you? Do it. Do it. Do it.
Just do it!
Quick refresher on our ranking system. Every film in the franchise is going to be ranked on 5 factors, each given a score of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. These are acting, gimmick, style, menace, and plot. Averaged together, you get your final score. They all should be fairly obvious, and you know what? Just go back and watch our Dr. No video if you really want to know how this works. So let's just dive in to From Russia with Love. In this sophomore outing, we're going to be changing things up a little bit. For our Dr. No list, we went through the villains, rated them, and ranked them. For this one, we're going to try a more compact approach by rating and ranking at the same time. From Russia with Love has a total of 13 baddies, starting with number 13, Istanbul Hotel Manager. This guy is barely a villain and doesn't do too much other than greet Bond at his hotel and orchestrate him staying in a bugged hotel room. I'm not even entirely sure who he's supposed to be working for. The Russians, maybe? Or maybe even Karim Bey? No idea, but he's at least mildly antagonistic to Bond, and so he gets a place on the list with a dismal 1.2.
32 for Mr. Bond.
Hope you enjoy your stay.
Thank you.
Number 12, Grant's Rendezvous. After Red Grant is defeated by 007, Bond and his number 1 gal, for the moment, Tatiana Romanova, ditch their train and knock out this dude, who was waiting for Red Grant. Since Grant is all dead and shit, no dice on that one, and Bond hijacks the dude's truck before unceremoniously dumping him in the bay while also hijacking a boat.
Just isn't your day, is it?
There's one solid bit where he shows displeasure at Bond decimating a helicopter. As such, he nabs a 2 on acting, basically for just not being terrible. 1.3. Number 11, Russian Agent. This guy shows up at the Hagia Sophia, a mosque in Bulgaria. He's basically a non-entity, but holds some importance for being killed by Grant in order to protect Bond and potentially turn up the temperature on the Cold War. Not much to talk about here, so 1.4. Number 10, Binz. Binz is another Russian agent killed by Grant in order to forward his plot. In this case, Grant decides to kill total bro Karim Bey and uses Binz as a scapegoat. Sort of a double whammy, protecting Bond while also proving himself to be a legit evil motherfucker. I'm already just talking about Red Grant instead of Binz, so that should tell you how memorable this guy is. 1.6. Number 9, Spectre trainees. They're trainees on Spectre Island. They're cool, but they're not really characters. They're just a collection of nifty-looking heavies we'll never see again. They raise a lot of questions about how Spectre operates and gives us a lot of great ideas about where this could go in the future. While he never visits Spectre Island, he does wind up killing a lot of henchmen. Maybe some of them started here? I don't know. 2.5, thanks primarily to being absolute icons. I mean, just look at that flamethrower. That shit's fucking tight. Number 8, Spectre helicopter pilots. They're helicopter pilots in a scene that very directly rips off North by Northwest, which really tips us off to director Terrence Young's Hitchcockian aspirations. They're basically only this high because helicopters are rad. 2.6. Number 7, Fake Bond. Our first on-screen baddie in From Russia with Love is, of course, James Bond himself? Nah, movie's fucking with you. Our first proper pre-credits opening scene of the franchise, despite a heavy dose of Sean Connery, is completely absent of Bond. Instead, we get fake Bond, who is in reality just some guy. Is he a Spectre agent? Is he some rando that they pulled a Most Dangerous Game on? We never really find out, but for the sake of being completionists, we're going to count him as a baddie. Connery does fine as fake Bond. It's basically just Bond if he was mute, and when we finally reveal the actor's true face, he's far too dead to actually do any acting junk. I'm still not entirely sure how killing a non-00 in a Connery mask makes him any better at killing, but hey, I'm Bond trash and therefore not going to question it. 2.8. Moving on. Number 6, Kralinku. Coup is a Bulgarian working with Smersh in their fight against the Turkish. He leads the attack on the gypsy camp, but is perhaps best known for climbing out of a film star's mouth and getting shot by Karim Bey, making him the impetus for one of the greatest bro moments in film history. Just look at those two. Total bros. Coup is discussed more than he actually appears in From Russia with Love, but the filmmakers wisely give him a very specific look. He's sort of a ratty villain, and you can kind of tell just from the visuals what kind of bastard he probably is. He also gets bonus points for his gaggle of Bulgarian mercenaries, whom we will just quietly place in this spot as well for the sake of time. He's tied with Fake Bond with a 2.8, and only wins over because, well, he's an actual character. Number 5, Morsy Knee, or however the fuck you say this name. Our next baddie, Morsy Knee, is also introduced in the pre-credits sequence and is the head training dude at Spectre Island, a place that Bond sadly never finds himself in, despite that idea being rad as fuck. He's basically there to help introduce Grant and be the main drive of the plot, and then later die on a boat. Why exactly he, of all people, is sent to kill Bond in the third act is never properly explained, but hey, dude's cool, and he's played by Walter Gotell, who would go on to play General Gogol in the Roger Moore films. A respectable 3.8 for Morsy Knee, or however the fuck you say his name. Number 4, Kronstein. Kronstein, aka number 5 in the Spectre hierarchy, is first seen dominating in chess. When called in for a meeting with Blofeld, aka number 1, aka the guy you don't fuck with, Kronstein continues the match until his opponent waves the old metaphorical white flag. Basically, Kronstein's setup is a pretty big deal. And he sorta is. He does come up with a pretty solid plan to get the Lecter from the Russians, while also getting revenge on James Bond. Since revenge is literally the name of the game for Spectre, all would seem pretty chill. Unfortunately, it's James Bond, you fucking idiots. Of course things are going to go awry. In this case, because Grant had to monologue himself to death. As such, Kronstein's plan fails, and he is executed by a poison boot from Morsy Knee. Womp, womp. Kronstein, like many of our From Russia with Love baddies, scores a 5 on acting, but his gimmick leaves a little something to be desired, netting him a 4 since all he does is play chess and, well, life is a game of chess, man. On style, he's a respectable 4 thanks to that dapper outfit of his, while Menace is a 2 because he looks like he would snap in half during a light breeze. Plot is a 4 because, well, he comes up with most of it, but it is sadly not good enough for Blofeld to not give him the boot.
12 seconds. One day we must invent a faster working venom.
Tying with Morsy Knee, he nabs a 3.8. Number 3, Rosa Klebb. Oh look, it's Gay Panic, the person. While the time period was not particularly kind to lesbians, and that's to say nothing of the horror show that is Ian Fleming's writing, Rosa Klebb somehow comes out more or less on top. Her characterization here is a tad censored for the sake of 60s audiences, which is sort of a good thing because shit gets real uncomfortable. Lottie Linea puts a lot of work into crafting a three-dimensional villain in Rosa Klebb, who is meant to be a skilled Russian agent poached by Spectre for her unique skills. When visiting Spectre Island, she comes off as one badass bitch not to be trifled with, but practically wilts under the heat of Blofeld in later scenes. You can tell that she is extremely confident, but knows that any slight failure could cost her her life. 4.2 for Rosa Klebb. Number 2, Blofeld, from Rush with Love variant. Spectre number 1, aka Ernst Stavro Blofeld, as we'll know him in just a couple more films, doesn't do a whole lot here, but does leave a massive impression. He's played by Anthony Dawson, who you'll remember from Dr. No as Professor Dent, while his voice is provided by Eric Pullman. This Blofeld would never make a proper on-screen appearance and seemingly goes through some serious life-altering shit between now and You Only Live Twice, before turning into an American in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Blofeld's weird. However, in this instance, devoid of the context later films would bring, Blofeld is absolutely pitch perfect as the evil lurking in the shadows, while his various numbered cohorts do all the dirty work. In fact, all Blofeld really does is sit around, pet his cat, and talk about fish. And yet, that's enough to put him at number 2 on our villains list. He exudes power, and as such makes for the ultimate villain. Blofeld receives straight 5s for acting through Menace. He's just too iconic for anything less, and everything from his fish monologue to his cat-loving faceless gimmick to his dope odd ring, it all just works so perfectly. The only failing point is plot, since he really doesn't factor in much beyond, well, being the instigator. However, it's not his plan that anyone's following, nor does he ever become physically involved. He just gives orders, recites soliloquies, and orders death upon any minion who dares to fail him. As such, Blofeld receives a solid 4.6. And number 1, had to be him, Red Grant. Robert Shaw is the fucking GOAT of big blonde-haired Bond villains. In From Russia with Love, he's basically written as a very, very high-level henchman, but honestly he might as well be the main villain of the story. Taken as such, he's one of the few main baddies introduced in the pre-credit sequence, and introduced he sure as fuck is. Throughout the film, he plays things pretty coy, often saving Bond in order to get what he wants, knowing in his heart of hearts that he can take out 007 anytime he wants. Whether it's at the Gypsy camp or the Hagia Sophia, Grant acts as a demonic guardian angel for Bond. Later on, while aboard the Orient Express, Grant kills Karen Bay, who might as well be the best Bond bro of all time. Finally, Grant and Bond face off in a tense exchange wherein Grant pretends to be Bond's British contact. Watch how Grant, who has seen Bond interact several times with cohorts, easily mimics their style and kills off this hapless agent before taking his identity. Dude is savage, smart, and capable. Too bad he's not smart enough to just drink white wine with fish, or else he might have a perfect baddie score, and we'd just have a series of 22 movies about Red Grant stopping the evils of capitalism or something. That's not entirely fair, since he does still get the drop on 007, who through sheer will and competence manages to strangle Grant and stop us from getting the Red Grant film franchise that we all truly want. For acting, Grant gets a 5, partially because he's played by Robert Shaw, and let's be honest, he's Robert Shaw. Dude got eaten by a shark and still stole the whole damn show in Jaws, so come on. Beyond my hard-on for Shaw, and subsequently the divine godlike beauty of Red Grant, there's also the fact that he maintains a steady, unwavering menace throughout the film, despite barely speaking until he finally confronts Bond. Gimmick-wise, he's also a solid 5. He basically invented the blonde henchman archetype that would carry throughout the franchise, and fun fact, Robert Shaw was 4 inches shorter than Sean Connery, but thanks to some strategically placed apple boxes and Shaw's godlike presence, that's never a problem. He also did most of his own fighting, along with Connery, in one of the standout fights of the series. Style and menace are both 5s, because look at him. Plot is the one downside, since he's not necessarily integral past his death and makes the unfortunate mistake of not just killing Bond when he has the chance. Instead, he's caught in that classic trap of monologuing, the #1 cause of death for most big bads. We are begrudgingly forced to dock him 1/2 point. 4.9 for Red Grant, one of the best scores for one of the best villains.
He seems fit enough.
And that's it. Let me know how you like the different format, or maybe just yell about how wrong I am in the comments below. We'll continue our villainous Bondathon next time with Goldfinger.